Good morning. Today we're going to be performing operations with complex numbers, and this is standard 6.0. If you guys remember on the last lesson, we started to work with complex numbers. Every time we had a square root with a negative number inside, we know that the negative can come as an I, and then we still have the square root of 3. So we start working with imaginary numbers. Now, complex numbers have two parts. We have a real part and an imaginary part. So the 2 is the real part, and the 5i will be the imaginary part. And we can work with complex numbers, and we can add them, we can multiply them, we can subtract them, and we can also divide them. And we're going to treat the I just like any other variable. So let's look at example number 1. On example number 1, we are adding, and this is just like combining like terms. We're going to combine our real parts, that'll give me positive 1, and we're going to combine our imaginary parts, and that'll give me positive 12i. So the I are just treated like any other variable. Now on letter B, we have a subtraction, so we are subtracting two complex numbers. We are going to go through the same process as we've done before. We're going to change this minus to a positive. Now the first one stays the same because the negative belongs only to the complex number to the right. So then once we change it to a positive, we're going to change this to a positive, to the opposite. This is a positive, this is a negative, changes to a positive. So we change both of them to the opposite. If you want to think of it a different way, you can think of this as a negative 1, and then we are going to be distributing the negative 1 to each one. So negative 1 times 3 is positive 3. Negative 1 times negative 7 is positive 7. And from here, we do the same thing that we did on the previous problem. We combine our real numbers, which will be 1. And we combine the imaginary terms, which will give you positive 2i. Go and try letter C. Go and pause it. Try letter C and see what you get, and we can compare answers. Great. So either way, whether you want to multiply by negative 1 or just rewrite it as a positive, it's the same. You'll get the same answer. So the first one stays the same. That's going to change, the negative change to a positive, and whatever's on the right hand side would change to the opposite. So that becomes a positive, that becomes a positive as well. And now we can combine our like terms. So that'll give us 7 plus 3 will give us 10. We're going to combine negative 1i plus 4i will give us positive 3i. Easy process. Now for example 2, if you notice we are multiplying. There's nothing in between both parentheses. There's nothing in between both complex numbers. So we are going to multiply, and we're just going to FOIL. We're going to multiply the 2 times the 1 and the 2 times the negative 2i. So 2 times 1 will give us 2. 2 times negative 2i will give us negative 4i. Then we're going to distribute now the negative 3i times the 1 and the negative 3i times the negative 2. So negative 3i times 1 is negative 3i. Negative 3i times negative 2i will give us a positive 6i squared. Now we need to simplify, and we know that the square root of negative 1 is going to be I, just like we covered on the previous lesson. If we square both sides, And this is the primary definition. But if we square both sides to cancel the square root, the square root and the square cancel, so we have -1 is equal to I squared. So we have this definition. I squared is equal to -1. You also have to memorize this. So we're going to replace I squared, we're going to replace it with a -1. We have 2 minus 4I minus 3I plus 6, but instead of the I squared, we're going to replace it with a -1 because that's the value of I squared. We're going to continue to simplify this. So 2 minus 4I minus 3I minus 6. And now we're going to be combining like terms. So we're going to combine all whole numbers, or real part, which is -4. We're going to combine our imaginary parts, which is -7i. So basically we just FOIL, distribute the 2, distribute the -3. The I squared is -1. We multiply together, combine our like terms, and that's basically it. Now this is a long process, so I'm going to make it a little shorter as I go through the rest of the examples, so it doesn't come with so many steps. First, on letter B, we're going to use our distributive property to multiply. 1 times 3 will give me 1. 1 times -7 is -7i. -5i times 3 is -15i. -5i times -7. Negative times negative will be a positive 35i squared. Now, I know that I squared is -1, so -1 times positive 35 will give me -35. So notice I just did both steps at the same time. I squared is -1. -1 times 35 will be -35. So from here I can combine my like terms. So 1 minus 35 will give me -34. I'll combine our like terms, and that'll give me -22i. Go and try example C. See what you get, and then we can compare answers. Go and pause it. Great. So for letter C, I'm going to use my distributive property to multiply. That gives me -i times 3 is -3i. -i times -4i is positive 4i squared. Now, I know that I squared is -1. -1 times positive 4 will give me -4. I cannot combine anything, but it's important that you write down the real part first and then the imaginary part. And this will be our final answer.